Good morning, YouTube. This is Chuck, and it's Sunday, November 30th, 2025, last day of November, about 11 o'clock in the morning. And as you can see, I'm using my truck as my recording studio this morning. And if you wonder why I use the truck for a recording studio, it's because, number one, it's nice and quiet. I've got light coming in from both sides and the front, so the lighting's usually good. Although it looks like my cheeks are a little rosy this morning in the camera. And that's just a quiet place. I've used my little clip to hold the camera on the steering wheel, which puts the camera in a pretty good place, both for light or for the video itself and for sound. And if you wonder what that looks like, I'll plug a little picture of that in right here. Well, this morning I've got a couple stories for you, and it's going to be Bigfoot / paranormal stuff. And two incidents that just happened within the last 24 hours. And the first one I'm going to tell you about happened to my friend from Utah, and sometimes I just refer to him as Utah. And for those of you that may not be familiar with it, he has a job up in Salt Lake that's works for one of the big companies up there, and he has an unusual enough name that he'd be a little bit concerned if his name got out connected to the Sasquatch subject. And as we like to, I jokingly call it, he's not quite ready to be painted with the crazy brush yet. So he prefers that I just call him that. So that's why I do that. But he had something pretty interesting happen last evening, and then I had something pretty interesting happen during the night. And those are my two stories for today. So let me start with his. We've talked quite a bit about the Sasquatch people. They're able to basically be whatever they want to be. We refer to that as shape-shifting. But they refer to it a little bit differently, and they can kind of become different things, and basically pretty much anything they want to. And the family group that lives up there near him, where he has a spot that he goes to that's not really too far from his house, but anyway, he's got one that hangs around him, a young one named Lewis. And I think Lewis is probably about 10 years old now. And Lewis is a trickster, and he likes to do all kinds of stuff. And one of the things he does, he shows up in all kinds of different forms. And part of that, of course, is he's learning how to do that. And he's a young one in training, and he's learning how to shapeshift into various forms. And he's actually told my friend kind of how they do that, but of course the way he explained it is not necessarily a way that we would understand, because it doesn't conform to our laws of physics. But basically, when he went up there last evening to his spot up there, he said the first thing he noticed was when he parked his car to get out. He said there's a big rock there, and just as he parked his car, a great big raven landed on top of the rock, not very far from, a little over arm's length away. Well, that's not normal raven behavior, and the size was a little bit unusual. So he immediately thought, hey, that's one of them saying, hi, how you doing? Welcome, So one of the things he does, he carries a pocket full of peanuts, and so he put a peanut out for it, and it kind of looked at him and went and got the peanut. And but that was his first thing. He said it was a little bit large, which is a clue, and acting very unraven-like, which is a big clue. And it was by itself, which is another clue. So anyway, he goes walking over to his spot, and it's a little bit of a walk, and he has a place that he likes to go sit. And so he's on his way over there, and all of a sudden, right in front of him, is a moose. Now, moose sightings are not common where he lives. You can hear about them in the high mountains of Utah and Colorado, but they're not real common. They're not real common where he's at. But here's a young adult bull moose walking across the pathway right in front of him. Well, the fact that it was even there was a clue. But one of the things he noticed, and he noticed it right away, is he said that, it's pretty rocky there, and there's a little bit of low brush there, and he said it was stepping very gingerly. And the impression he got was that it was kind of unsure on its feet. And And so he said he was watching it, and he said it gave him the impression of somebody on skates who hadn't been on skates in a long time, and they were doing it, but they were pretty unsure of themselves and unsteady. And, of course, that was a clue as well. Well, of course, it's the fall, and it's the rut, and a male moose, moose can be kind of unpredictable at times, and so he's watching this thing, and he said it's not very far away. He says it's maybe 20 yards, and that's 60 feet, so he said pretty close to him. And it turned around and kind of was looking at him, and just sort of standing there looking at him. And so he said there was a tree right there, and so he kind of stopped by this tree, and he was going to, something to, if the moose would decide to get aggressive, he had something he could stand behind and try to keep it between him and the moose. And he said when he stepped along, kind of stepped off the trail by the tree, and he said then he heard a little noise off to the side, off to his right. And he looks over there, and there's a guy standing there with a camera on a tripod. He said, literally within arm's reach of him. He said he didn't notice him before. He didn't notice him when he walked up. He didn't notice him when he stepped over there. But all of a sudden, there he was. And he said, the guy said to him, he said, "Hey, did you see that moose?" And he said, "Yeah, I did." And so they both were looking at the moose. And the guy told him, he says, "Yeah," he says, "I was going to take some pictures down by the creek here." And he said, all of a sudden, looked up, and the moose, it's like it showed up out of nothing. And he said, like it wasn't there, and then it was there. Clue, all a clue. So a friend went on down and sat in his usual spot. And, after he got done going through his normal routine of meditating and thanking the Creator for the day and the things that he does, he said he kind of reached out, and he said, "Hey, if any of you young ones here would like to practice on me with anything, noises or anything, feel free to do that." And he said almost immediately he heard sounds. He said like stones dropping on both sides of him. He said he closed his eyes and he heard like stones dropping on both sides of him and behind him. He says it'd be like somebody would take a rock about the size of a golf ball and hold it in their hand and just drop it on the ground. And he said they had that sounds coming all right around him. So he says, "Yeah, I can hear that." And so he's telling him, "Yeah, I hear it off to my left. Yeah, I hear it off to my right." And he told him, he said, "If you want to practice with smells, it's okay to do that too, because they mimic sounds and they mimic odors. They weren't actually dropping stones; they were making that sound." And so he says, and if you want to make an odor, you can do that. And he says almost immediately he smelled a very, very faint odor of campfire smoke. Well, they're not supposed to have campfires up there, and sometimes people do, but he said there wasn't anything that he said, and he wouldn't say, other than that photographer, he didn't see a lot of people around. And so he said, and so he told him, he says, "I can smell that. It smells like campfire smoke, and if you want to make it stronger, you can make it stronger." And he said they did a little bit, and he said not a whole lot. But but then as he said that, and he said there was a breeze come up. He said it had been real still, and all of a sudden this little breeze come up, blowing out of a direction you wouldn't expect. And of course all that stuff is clues. And so then gradually the campfire smoke smell went away, and so he said when it came time to go, and he goes up there right about sundown. So of course it starts getting dark, and he wants to get back to his car before it gets dark. So he's walking back to his car, and all of a sudden he hears a squirrel chittering up in the tree off to the side there, and he looks up in the tree, and ways up in the tree, here's a little skinny squirrel running around and around and around the tree, making all kinds of noise. Well, Lewis has been known to become a squirrel, and so he said, "Okay, Lewis, thanks. I got to go now." And so he went home. Well, later on, he kind of reached out, and he said, and he found out that the initial raven, was Lewis's little brother Jonathan. And that's the first time he's seen Jonathan in the form of a raven. Normally, Jonathan is in the form of either a small squirrel or a chipmunk. Lewis, on the other hand, has had, he's shown himself in a whole bunch of different forms. But it turned out that the moose was Lewis. And so my friend said, you're walking pretty carefully there. Is this the first time you've ever been a moose? And he didn't get an answer, which normally means no. And he says, am I correct in assuming that you have not been a moose very many times? Yes. So basically, I characterized it as a woman wearing high heels who hasn't worn high heels for a long time, and which is really funny because that's exactly what my wife said. She said that was the first thing that came to her mind when I started telling her about this. And so whether you think about somebody on skates that hadn't been on skates for a while, or somebody brand new on skates, or somebody wearing high heels for the first time, that's kind of the way this moose was stepping over and through the rocks. And so apparently Lewis was practicing being a moose, and he hadn't been a moose very many times. So something new to him. He's learning as well. But, Lewis, he assumes a bunny. One time he was actually in the snow outside my friend's backyard, and his wife and grandson were standing there looking out the window in the backyard, and they saw this bunny hopping across through the snow. It sat down, turned around, and looked at him, and then disappeared into thin air. Well, it turned out that was Lewis. And Lewis done a couple other pretty interesting things as well. And so anyway, that's what my friend from Utah experienced last night. Now let me tell you what happened to me this morning. And I went to bed pretty much normal time last night, but I woke up about 2:30 in the morning, and I was freezing cold. Now we had the thermostat set, and we had plenty of blankets on. There's no reason for us to be cold at all. But I was so cold I was shivering. And after I woke up, of course I had to go potty, so I got up and went and did that. And I'm laying back down, and I'm trying to figure out why I'm so darn cold. Well, I know that occasionally they'll do that to get your attention, because they've done it to me before. So I reached out and I said, if you're doing that, if you're making me cold, will you please stop doing that? And I laid back down, and I was still cold. But then all of a sudden I heard a sound, and I'm pretty sure it was probably just in my head, but it sounded like it was outside, and it sounded like a siren, like a fire truck siren. And it was real brief. And right after that, and of course that got my attention. And so I rolled back over on my back, and I'm just kind of laying there paying attention, trying to figure out what might come next. And I heard very clear mind speak, and it said, "Davy, drive us out of here." Now it was a male voice, but it was a high-pitched male voice, and it sounded like he was scared to death. And then all it was is "Davy, drive us out of here." Not get us out of here, drive us out of here. And I thought that was a little odd. Well, then right after that, I started feeling a presence. Actually a number of presences that were off to my right. Now, the way I've traveled, we're still out with a travel trailer, and we're down near Florence, Arizona. And the way the bedroom in my trailer is set up, like a lot of small travel trailers is, the head of the bed is at the front of the trailer. And I sleep on the right side. And on either side of the bed is a closet, a hanging closet, and with a drawer underneath it to put your stuff. And so there was literally right alongside the bed, and the closet goes down about to my waist. So literally right alongside my bed is a closet. There's a wall right there, right from the mattress and wall. But it felt like there was nothing there. It felt like there's a multiple presence right there. And it was like a crowd, like feeling the presence of a crowd. And and it did not feel like normal Sasquatch when they reach out and give you the tingle. It didn't feel like that. And so I reached out and I said, I feel that. Can I help you pass over? And instantly it ramped up the level of excitement. And I realized it had something to do with that, what I heard earlier. And so I went ahead and I laid back down, and I did what my friend from Nevada has taught us to do about how to help somebody pass over. And the way you do that is you kind of visualize an open door with lights behind it, like a bright light, and they're utilizing your energy to cross over. And so I laid back and I tried to concentrate on how to do that, and I had a really difficult time doing that. I could, and I put the door off up here to my left, and of course the entities are off here to my right. And I put a door out there and I opened it, but I was having a real difficult time trying to create the bright light effect in there in my mind. It was like I was really focusing and concentrating real hard on doing that. Well, instantly I felt this rush of energy, right to left, whoom, and then it was over with. There was no more energy here. I still couldn't create that light over there like I was trying to do, like we were taught to do. But I got the door open, and then I felt a more familiar tingle, more like a Sasquatch tingle. And so I asked. I said, "How many of them were there?" 6. What happened? Killed by Indians. Holy cow! That was all I got. It was the number 6 and killed by Indians. But I also got a feeling that whoever it was over here, they approved of what happened and they approved of how it was handled. Now that's pretty similar to the incident I had before, that I've told you about before, with the female named Celeste. But in this case, I didn't get any names. It was a group of them. And the only name I heard was that initial mind speak, Davy, drive us out of here. So apparently one of them's name was Davy. Now this area down here, of course, there was, in the Indian War days, there was quite a bit of activity down here. So is it possible that, maybe a group of travelers or settlers or somebody or other was ambushed when they were in a wagon or something? And they ended up all being killed. Well, this morning I tried to see if I could find anything on Google. And, Google knows everything, but I went ahead on Google and I looked for Davy killed by Indians in Arizona. And Google AI couldn't find anything about that, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. It might have happened and not been reported. But so do I absolutely know what brought that on? No, I really don't. I'm pretty sure I know what happened, and I know what part of it I did. But the question is, of course, when did it happen? Where did it happen? What exactly happened? And I don't really have any answer for that. But that happened just here this morning, right in my travel trailer, and I'm sitting in my truck in front of it right now. And so I thought I would tell you about that. And as I always tell you, believe or disbelieve however you choose. But that's what happened. That's the way I see it. 2 interesting stories. Lewis trying out his shape-shifting into a moose and still having trouble getting the walking down right. And that was pretty comical, actually. And then this real bizarre thing that happened with me. And I think I know what happened. But all I can do is tell you what I experienced, and let you judge for yourself. So as I always tell you, take care of each other, or love each other, and take care of yourself. Show gratitude for what you have, because this is Thanksgiving season. If you had a good Thanksgiving, that's great, because I'm sure there's a lot of people in the world, a lot of places, who went hungry on Thanksgiving, or even worse, didn't know whether they were going to survive before sundown because of all the conflicts that are going on around the world. So I'm going to wrap this one up right here. So until I talk to you again, let me just tell you, peace out.